Okay, this is going to be a bit of a controversial video. I am going to talk about BioShock Infinite, what many people are hailing to be one of the best games of the last few years. This game has been marketed out the wazoo. They were doing press conferences for this game before BioShock 2 was even out, if you can actually believe that. If you actually look, I think 2 came out in 2011, and I remember seeing Infinite panels as far back as 2010. It's like a whole year, which I don't really understand. I think it doesn't matter. I did not get into the BioShock series until this past winter, when I saw BioShock 1 and 2 and all of the DLC for it as part of a bundle package for under $30. And I knew I was never going to find a better deal than that, so I went with it. I loved BioShock 1's story. BioShock 2's story wasn't as good, but the gameplay kind of made up for it because it allowed you to dual wield your weapons and your plasmids, effectively making combat quicker and much more smoother. So I was kind of excited for Infinite, especially when I saw all the praise that all my friends who play the games were like throwing around, like, oh, this game is amazing, this game is great. So I picked it up with, expecting the best, and what I got was a resounding It's not a bad game. I mean, it's no Resident Evil 5, but at the same time, it's no Silent Hill 2. It's not even a BioShock 1, truth be told. I know I am opening myself up for a massive amount of hatred thrown my way. I embrace it, but like those very few that are trying to speak out against the hype, I don't think we really, I at least am not trying to hate on this game. I'm just trying to, I guess, I don't know, just explain the problems I have with it. Because all the mainstream critics love this game. Like, Angry Joe, you got your IGN, I mean, Yahtzee, Ben Croshaw, the hardest man in the world to please, gave this game a positive review. And he acknowledged that there were flaws, but he's like, oh, the flaws don't even matter. And I don't understand why the flaws don't matter. And I guess, well, I guess I won't linger anymore. I'll just kind of go in order of the things that I had problems with and work from there. So, I guess the best place to start off with is, number one, the gameplay. I guess the gameplay is the most logical place to start off with. It's not bad. I mean, the controls are still good, although I got so used to BioShock 1 and 2 that the default controls were kind of different, so I automatically had to switch it to the controls from the first couple of games, just because I had gotten so used to them. But everything plays fine, shooting works, movement, jumping, all of that. It all works fine. Melee works perfectly well. My problem with it, and where I kind of come down, is that the gameplay is very uninspired. Almost textbooked, even. BioShock 1 and 2 were almost like 1990 arcade kind of shooters, in the style of, GoldenEye and Duke Nukem and games like that. And I actually really kind of liked that, because you had all these weapons that you could use, you had them all on you at once. There was no cover-based shooting. You could aim down sights, but there was never really a need to. It was just free-for-all massacre, basically. But in this game, it's more like Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War, basically every mainstream shooter that's out these days. It kind of lost that appeal for me when I'm going down the street shooting at Columbia policemen, and it's like, well, I've played this game 100 times. I own like 7 of them. Why do I really need to play another one? I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is just that it's not amazing. It's standard. The weapons, there's a good number of weapons, but you can only hold 2. I don't understand the practical reason why they changed that. Like, why go from being able to hold every weapon in the game to only being able to hold 2 at a time? That was one of the biggest disappointments to me. And I guess realistically, a person can always only hold like 2, but you only get to hold 2. I mean, granted, you do get to, hold on to the ammo for other weapons so that if you come across one, you have the ammo for it, and that's good, but still, you're only holding on to 2. I know I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here, but to go from holding 10 weapons at a time to only holding 2, do you kind of see why that's a bit of a downgrade? Weapons aren't amazing. I mean, I think just about everyone kind of gravitates towards the carbine and the shotgun. Personally, I was more of a carbine hand cannon kind of guy, because there's just something about a 6-shooter with a heavy caliber round that just really turns me on. There are weapon upgrades, but they kind of don't really make much sense, because again, you're really only going to gravitate towards your weapons of choice, and money's kind of tight in this game. So you're only going to really upgrade the weapons you want, and you're not going to bother with the rest. Whereas in the last couple of games, you pretty much got to upgrade everything because you got to use everything. Not only that, but there's like 5 kinds of submachine gun and 3 kinds of grenade launchers, and after a while, I couldn't tell any of them apart. I think one of the submachine guns is a burst weapon, and I'm pretty sure there was a flamethrower grenade launcher or something like that, but they're all interchangeable. You really could have just boiled it down to 1 submachine gun and 1 grenade launcher, and maybe have the fire one be like a chemical thrower, like the first game. I mean, especially when all the submachine guns effectively do the same amount of damage, have the same kind of effects, same kind of accuracy and recoil. The clip sizes remain the same. The achievement to get the weapon goes for all of them. So really, you could have just stuck with 1 submachine gun and it would have worked about as well. The vending machines are here, but I don't really find them as useful as I did before. I mean, it's good because if you really kind of need health and salts and ammo, like, it's there. But I never really found myself using it all that much. I would always just kind of, for me at least, I always found a lot of items kind of scavenged around. Even the melee is kind of disappointing because I loved the wrench in the first game. I didn't love the drill so much in the second one. And while I think the skyhook is cool because you're essentially decapitating people with a radial saw, it still doesn't have the same allure to it that the wrench had. In fact, it's actually kind of disappointing when you realize that the grappling hook is really only used for fatalities. So basically in all regards, I just found the combat to be a downgrade. Number 2, I guess I'll get into Columbia itself. Now this is where I might lose some people, and I'm sorry for that, but try to stay with me and try to see if I make any sense at all. Rapture was a city in the ocean in the 1950s and 60s, at the bottom of the ocean. The thing is, I could feasibly buy that, because it's in a time period where technology was improving, a lot of modern day appliances and basic technology was being created around this time. A lot of modern day inventions were made during this time period. Our basic economy was growing, and Rapture was a city that I could feasibly believe could exist at the bottom of the ocean. You could argue it, and argue it hard, and I would believe it, but you could still technically buy it. A city in the sky in 1912... I don't know, Columbia, while it is beautiful and big, doesn't feel as... I'm going to regret using this word, I know, but it doesn't feel as real as Rapture did. Given the time period, given the technology in this time period, I mean, 1912, you couldn't even build the world's grandest ship without having it sink in its first week on duty. So, you mean to tell me that there's this city in the sky that floats on nothing but quantum physics, which is a whole other mind meld in itself? I mean, at first I really kind of liked the idea of it, because whereas Rapture was, already fast in decline, Columbia is still thriving. And you actually get to see the people in there before, not as messed up. Well, they're messed up, but they're not like, plasmids messed up. You get what I mean. You get what I'm saying. But because Columbia is like this, it's just, it kind of takes you out of it. Like the voxophones. In Rapture, because the whole place is basically a pigsty, you can kind of understand why there are, tape recorders around. But in Columbia, if the whole place is fine, why do you find random, voxophones lying around? I mean, are people really just recording their innermost secrets and just leaving them all over the city for just because? And the skylines. The skyline, I mean, it's fun to swing around the city, but if this was real, and I know you're going to get me on this, but really, honestly, Columbia is kind of an immersion killer. If this was real, who would use this? Who would really be sliding around on these, skylines? The police? I mean, fine, but do the regular citizens use them? Is Dad going to work, swinging around on a skyline? Is that how it works in Columbia? I don't know. I mean, there are bridges and stuff, but you don't really see them used that often. And, how big is this town, really? I mean, Rapture was, big, but it was still kind of confined. It still felt contained. Columbia just feels like a big old mess that's constantly adding to itself. To the part where, towards the end of the game, I'm wondering, God damn, how large is this city? We should have, hit the edge by now. And how is there an ocean in the sky? There's a beach in Columbia. I don't know how that even works. Maybe somebody who understands quantum physics can tell me how that works. I don't understand it. It's just the little things about Columbia that really just kind of take me out of it. Okay, if the sound's still good, why am I still pulling hot dogs out of trash bins and eating them for health? Why are vending machines full of ammo and guns if, the regular population, it's just an ordinary day there? Who is using these vending machines for guns? Why don't they have vending machines for food? Why are there... Well, I guess I'll get to that part in the next part. But actually, I guess I'll just go into the next part right now. Part 3 of my complaints is the Vigors. Now, the plasmids in BioShocks 1 and 2... Honestly, you could probably get through the game without them. I mean, when I played through, really only the 3 plasmids I needed were Electrobolt, Telekinesis, and Incinerate. Because those are the 3 you actually kind of need to progress through the game. I didn't really need anything else. There was never really a moment in BioShock where I was like, oh man, thank God I had Beast Swarm or I would have been f***ed. But I understood why plasmids were there. Because they were the cause of the fall of Rapture. Because people were splicing up so much and they were basically turning into these monsters. And so I understood why they were important to the story in that regard. In Columbia, the Vigors are here, but I couldn't tell you why they're here. I couldn't tell you why they're important to the story. I couldn't tell you why they're necessary. I mean, I understand, Fink got the creation for them by peeking in on Tenenbaum through a tear, and they kind of spawned from that, which I could kind of buy that. And I could also buy that they were in there because it's BioShock and the whole series basically runs on the idea of having superpowers. But here's my problem with it. Nobody uses these Vigors. It's you, Slate with the shock jockey, the firemen, and the crowmen. I forget their real name. They have a really long, pretentious name. I think Zealot of the First Lady or something like that. I don't know. But you know what I mean, though. And that's it. I count the number of people who use these Vigors on one hand. The regular policemen, your regular enemies just use regular firearms. So it's why are these Vigors here if nobody's using them? You establish that they're in the game, that they're a part of this town, but I want to say 10% of the average enemies you come across use the Vigors. No one else does. Even in a universe where there is a full-on open rebellion going on, these rebels and the Columbia policemen are still more content to use pistols and submachine guns than they are using fireballs and throwing people in the air and shooting electricity. They would rather just shoot them than use these God-fearing powers. It just doesn't really make sense to me. Like, why would I use a shotgun over a fistful of fire? You know what I mean? And my other problem with it is that, and this isn't just an Infinite problem, this is kind of something I've had with the whole series. Once I had the Vigor, once I had the power up to shoot electricity out of my hands, essentially giving me the power of Zeus himself, once I had that, I really didn't need anything else. Honestly, like, I could get through the whole game pretty much just zapping people with electricity. The two Vigors that I used in this game were Shock Jockey and Possession, but I didn't use Possession the way you're supposed to use it. I did use Possession to take control of the machines, but once I realized that Possession wears off and you still have to destroy the machines anyway, I was just like, that. There's no point in doing that if they're just gonna, wear off. So what I would use Possession for were on the vending machines. Because I don't know how many of you know this, I haven't really seen any Let's Plays do this. Then again, I've only seen I've only seen one completed Let's Play of the game, and I'm watching Blame Truth and X-Cals. But when you use Possession on a vending machine, it shoots out money. So, knowing that, I just used Possession on the vending machines, collected the money, and I soon actually had a good currency system built up just by doing that. I mean, granted, Possession is the one that uses the most salts, but it was still more effective than using it on a turret when it was just going to wear off in 30 seconds, you know what I mean? But it's this feeling of that we have these powers, and most of them don't even feel necessary. Like, I used Bucking Bronco maybe once, and that was it. I never really felt it was necessary to hold the guy in the air and shoot them when I could just zap them with electricity. I used Murder of Crows a few times. That was fun. I never really used the charge one. I never really used the Hydra one, whatever that one was called. I used fire sometimes, but again, once I had electricity, fire just kind of took a back seat. It was just this kind of idea that we have these plasmids that I don't really need. I don't really find them necessary. And unlike in the first couple of games, you can't really swap out for different things. You can't really switch the plasmids around. The plasmids you get are the ones you're stuck with. There's only one upgrade for Shock Jockey too, which is kind of disappointing. And my third gripe is that the plasmids seem weaker. Like, in BioShock 1 and 2, when I hit somebody with Electro Bolt, that looks like it hurts. That guy looks like he's getting about 1,000 volts of 100,000 volts of electricity running through their body and frying them. Here, it looks like it feels like a bee sting. You know what I mean? And there's no puddles of water like there were in the couple games when you could zap the water and fry 3 enemies at once. They were either not there or they were so small and unnoticeable that I didn't even bother with them. Same with the oil slicks for fire, and it kind of made the Vigors more ineffective, which kind of stinks because you can actually do a lot more with them now. You can lay down these traps, but I never really found an applicable way to use them until the end of the game when I was going against the Silent Boys, and I would lay down a couple electric traps because I always ended up tripping the alarms and having them swarm me. So by laying down those electric traps, it kind of saved ammo for me, truth be told. But even though you can set up these traps, again, I never really found a real need to set these traps when I could just outright zap them, and I never really got to use them in creative ways, you know what I mean? So I feel like the Vigors are really just kind of have no soul to them. They're just kind of these fun little things you can play with, but they're not really necessary. Number 4, I guess I can just talk about this now, probably be the Vox Populi. Now, the racist tones in this game. Let's just come out and say it. There are a lot of racist tones in this game. Now, I'm not one of those people on Tumblr that was crying out against this game over its racist content. Actually, I was defending it for a while because it's 1912. This is the time period we're in, and this is what's going on. The Civil Rights Movement, MLK Jr., all of that isn't going to be for another 50 years. So this is still the time period where black people, cleaned our bathrooms, where we were segregated between whites only and blacks only, where no Irish need apply signs are still hanging in office and building business windows, where if you're not white American, you're second rate. You know what I mean? So in that regard, I understood why, for when the first scene of them, wheeling out an interracial couple for people to throw baseballs at, it was terrifying and terrible. But then I remember 1912. This was probably what it was like then. Although in 1912, I think that if it was a real interracial couple, though, there would have been lynchings, tarrings, and featherings going on, which there's none in this game. In fact, for as racist as this game kind of goes off, it doesn't really go all the way. I mean, black people get called Negroes, but I think it's safe to say there's one other word that they could be called that's just a little bit worse, that this game never really drops. It's probably a good thing that they don't, but at the same time, if you're gonna, talk about this issue that nobody really talks about in video games, why don't you just go all the way? No strings attached. Let's just okay, we've got this idea, let's roll with it. It doesn't feel like it utilizes that enough, and it doesn't feel like it really plays on that enough. You know what I mean? Like, we see some racist stuff here and there, but then in the beginning, but then it just kind of dropped, and then you never really hear about it for the rest of the game. So it's like, why are we having it if it's not important? You know what I mean? And the Vox, like Daisy Fitzroy and the Vox Populi, I was rooting for them because I'm like, yes, let us support the underdogs here. Let us, get in there and let's help them rebel. Let's get in there and help them overthrow this horribly racist government. Let's do that. Here's where they lost me. When you meet the Vox Populi and you meet Daisy and you realize they are just as bad insane as Comstock and his followers are. I can tell you the exact moment where I just kind of lost my argument. When you get to the part where Daisy Fitzroy executes Jeremiah Fink, like bullet to the head, smears his blood all over his face, and then holds his child at gunpoint ready to kill him. At that point, I was just like, well, there goes my argument. Because, like, how are you supposed to argue against that? That the game is being intentionally racist. I mean, people say that, intentions don't matter. Personally, I think they need to at least be taken into consideration. Because, like, yeah, Jar Jar Binks was racist, but I don't think that's what George Lucas was going for. You know what I mean? But here you have a black character smearing blood all over her face and having guns to kids' heads. And Comstock and the white people, for everything wrong they've done, they don't do that. So it's like, why are you further putting the idea that they're animals, Like this, no, you had a good idea and then you just went the other way with it. At least that was my thought at first, but a friend of mine, my buddy Kieran, kind of put it in a perspective for me by saying that it basically said that both sides are irredeemable. That both sides are basically nuts. That you can't really have one side that's better than the other in this particular scenario. And in that, I guess I kind of understand. But at the same time, it gives me no one to root for. I'm not rooting for Comstock. I'm not rooting for Daisy. I'm not even really rooting for Booker. I don't like any of these characters. And that kind of leads to my next point, the characters. I guess I'll talk about this in three parts. We'll do the voice acting, the dialogue, and the characters themselves. Voice acting was really good. And the reason I say it in this kind of tone is because voice acting has never really been BioShock's strength. BioShock 1 and 2 have had some pretty bad voice actors. I mean, there have been some good ones, like Andrew Ryan's was good, Tenenbaum's was okay, Sandra Cohen had a really good voice actor, Diane McClintock and Bill McDonough had good voice actors, Augustus Sinclair was another one, Gil Alexander, but mostly the voice acting was pretty darn terrible. In this game, they actually got professional talent in this game. I mean, Troy Baker and Jennifer Hale are voicing in this game. Those are two of some of the biggest names in the gaming industry. So they're not screwing around with this one. And the voice acting is very good. The dialogue sucks. The dialogue in this game is god-awful. Oh my god. Like, BioShock 1 and 2 had some really good dialogue. 1 more so, but there were some really good, like, moments. Like, you know, like, a man chooses, a slave obeys. You know, that's like, would you kindly? Like, they had that kind of dialogue that is ingrained in your mind. And this game, no. No, the dialogue is so cringeworthy that I almost wanted to turn... Well, I didn't really turn off the subtitles, but I wanted to, because my god. Like, when... I mean, I guess I shouldn't complain, but when Elizabeth... You know, when you're on the beach and you wake up and you're like, where am I? And Elizabeth's like back in the land of living. I was just like, you went there. You went there. Why did you go there? Oh, that line is so cliched, it makes my brain hurt. And then there are these random conversations. Like, I guess they have to have backstory somewhere, but they just feel so awkward. They feel awkward and out of place given the situation that they're in. I felt like there could have been better... It could have been written better. Well, the way I think of it is, the Lutece twins got all the good lines. Like, Ken Levine wrote the best lines specifically for the Lutece twins, and everyone else just got shafted. That is honestly what I think, because the only good, memorable lines that come out of this game are from Rosalind and Robert Lutece. I think it's Robert, isn't it? I honestly... I can't keep their name. I only know Rosalind, really. But from the Lutece twins, those are the only good lines that come out of it. As for the characters themselves, again, I don't like any of them. I don't like Comstock, and I don't agree with any of his beliefs. I don't like Daisy once I realize that she is completely out of her mind. All the other characters in this game are, you know... I mean, every other character you meet in Columbia is pretty much a racist or just insane. Even the character we're given, Booker is not a good person. He's a Wounded Knee veteran. He's a Pinkerton agent. If you know anything about the Pinkertons, you know they were not the nicest people in the world. He's this drinker who has massive gambling debts, and the only reason he's with Elizabeth is he's getting her back so he can pay off his debts. That's it. He's a terrible person. And it's like, I mean, we can hand in some terrible people to play as from time to time, but I'm honestly rooting for him to lose half the time. Because he wants to wipe away his sins. You know, he wants to forget Wounded Knee, forget the Pinkertons, forget all the crimes he did. And literally half an hour being in Columbia, he's taking off somebody's head with a radial saw. And there's this bloodbath in the streets, and he's killing people straight out. And it's like, well, this is kind of contradictory. And then he, like, mopes about it afterwards. Okay. Also, the gore in this game, like, BioShock 1 and 2 had some gory moments, but even by those standards, this game goes overboard. I'm not a stickler for gore. Like, I've played Dead Space, and that game is about as gory as it can get. But my god, there's like no limit to how gory this game gets. Like, you're ripping out people's hearts out with this saw thing. The Lutece twins, I mean, they're good characters, but I don't understand them. I mean, I understand that they're technically dead, and that because of their accident, they can travel between dimensions however they want, whenever they want. But it's like, I don't understand you. You make no sense to me, and you're not really explained all that well. I guess. I don't know. I liked them, but yeah. Okay, time to go into the real head. We're going to go on to the storyline and the ending. So basically, BioShock Infinite it's the story of Booker goes to save this girl Elizabeth, to take her out of this horribly racist town and get her back to solid ground where he can trade her off and wipe his debt. This game also introduces another key mechanic. Interdimensional travel. It is established that there are infinite upon infinite upon infinite upon infinite dimensions. Basically, hypertime. And it's a good concept. My problem with it, though, hypertime is an inherently flawed concept. It's an inherently flawed plot. Because the plot holes in it are gargantuan. Oh my god. And this game is no exception. The ideas are presented, but they're never really focused on. For instance, if you kill someone in one dimension, and you go into another dimension, and the people who are killed in that dimension are alive here, but they're bleeding from the ears and the nose, and they're kind of all wobbly, and it establishes that the characters that died in one dimension feel it in another. Problem with that, we never see it enough. Like, you see it in one part and then it's just gone. Like, I feel like, I don't know, it was this weird thing, like, we established that these characters from other dimensions feel it when they're killed, but we never actually show it enough. Like, were there moments in, like, the game where you kind of, like, see these characters walking around and you're like, oh, hey, they were killed. I wonder if I killed them. Like, I feel like I could have done that. There's kind of a moment with Lady Comstock later in the game, but that's a whole different matter. And really, I don't even know where to begin on that one. But the concept of dead and alive is so skewered in this game that it's almost impossible to keep track. One problem I definitely had with it is we started the game in one dimension. We go to a certain point. We need to find Chen Lin and get weapons from him for the Vox Populi. We go into another dimension where he's still alive because he died in our dimension. So we go into another dimension where he's still alive. He's alive, but he's feeling the effects of being dead, and we need to go get his tools. So we go get the tools, they're under lock and key, but we go through another dimension to get the tools, only to find out the Vox have all the weapons, Chen Lin is dead, and the revolution has already started. And we spend the rest of the game in this revolution apocalyptic nightmare. Here's one of my problems. We never go back to the dimension we started in. What's happening in that dimension now? Is Comstock wondering what happened to us? Is Daisy still waiting around for her weapons? Is Jeremiah still wondering, you know, did we leave? Are we going to accept his offer? What's going on here? It feels like we just kind of leave that dimension and we never revisit it again. And it's like, well, what's happening? You know? Like, what's going on? Like, when Daisy dies in the Revolution dimension, does the first version of her that we met feel it? I assume she does, but we don't know because we never go back. It's like, it just kind of bothers me. Like, why don't we ever go back to the dimension we started in? I guess it makes things more interesting with, you know, World War III going on. Actually, technically, because World War I hasn't even started yet at this time, then I guess technically this is World War I. Well, World War I's going on. I mean, but it's still, it's like something that I just kept harping on, like, what's going on back at where we started? We don't know because we never revisit it. Now, people are praising this game for being well written. I think they're mistaking well written for, you know, having good ideas but not executing them properly. The ideas are clever. The execution is crap. Like, the city's flying on quantum physics. How? How did they get it to fly on quantum physics? Elizabeth can open tears in dimensions because her pinky is gone. That's a whole other mess that I don't even want to I'm going to get into later. And then I guess that leads to the ending where it's revealed that Elizabeth is Booker's daughter. In the alternate dimension where Booker accepts baptism after Wounded Knee, he becomes Comstock and creates Columbia and everything that happens. So the only way to stop Comstock is to drown Booker. Why is that? Okay, you're drowning him in one dimension. Problem is, you've established that there are so many different dimensions. In fact, Elizabeth at one point even says that, no, Comstock may be dead here, but he's still alive in many other worlds. So by killing him in this one dimension, how does that stop it? How does that stop Comstock? Because really, there's more than one way to birth a dictator. You know what I mean? Like, what happens in the dimensions where he refused baptism and still becomes Comstock? What if Comstock is somebody else in other dimensions? What if a whole bunch of different things? You know, what happens in the dimensions where Booker kept Anna Elizabeth? You know what I mean? Like, you establish all these different dimensions, but there's so many questions now that are asked. Like, there's no reason why killing Booker in one dimension would immediately wipe Comstock out of all history. If you want to really, go to stop Comstock, you should go back to before the test twins were born and kill their parents. That would stop it for sure. And the ending, where it's revealed that at least one version of Booker is alive and he might actually have Anna back, people see this as a happy ending. I do not. Because we're now back in a time before Booker gave away Anna. This decision to keep her, or to not do the baptism, is now destiny. Booker is still the same guy he was at the beginning of the game. He's still a war veteran. He's still a former Pinkerton. He's still done these horrible atrocities. He's still a drunk. He's still a gambler. He's still all of these things, and he's still the guy who would sell his daughter to get rid of his debts. This is what we've now subjected Elizabeth to. A life with this guy as his father, as her father. That's not really positive. Because, I mean, Booker has not changed. All that character development he went to, whether you think there was character development or not, is gone. It's completely irrelevant. So, he might not choose to give Elizabeth away, but even still, even if he doesn't, she's still stuck with a drunk. You know what I mean? So yeah, we really won that one. I guess the final word on the story is that the first two games were all about kind of like freedom and choice and choosing your destiny. But this game is a complete argument against that. By establishing that there are infinite dimensions, you are basically saying that everything you do is meaningless. Everything has already been planned out to the exact detail. Like, in this dimension, I am choosing to continue this review. In another dimension, I have ripped my clothes off and are now running down the street singing Camptown Lady. You know what I mean? And all these decisions have been established. They are predestined. You cannot change them. So, by that logic, it means everything we do is meaningless. Like, there's no point in doing anything. This is an argument against free will, this game. It basically means that everything you do has already been determined. You cannot really alter it. And if you can alter it, then, I mean, we saw how well that worked. It's this tone of finality when it comes to its plot that it really just kind of irritates me, because I don't really necessarily agree with it. To actually technically contradict the first two games, when it was more about, how Jack came to break away from the shackles and become his own man, and how Delta, chose to go for Eleanor. I mean, technically he was bonded to her, but I still felt like it was more of a choice to go for her. And this game is more just like, oh, hey, we already determined you were going to do this, now you're going to do it. And it just kind of, it doesn't feel like it fits into the BioShock frame of mind, you know what I mean? I don't know, it just feels like, with all this in mind, why bother doing anything? You know what I mean? It just feels like a waste, truth be told. Now this part I'm actually kind of editing in after I've done the initial review, but there was this couple things that I realized I forgot to mention in the review, so I'm adding them in now. One thing that bugged me about this story was the amount of plot dead ends, or gameplay dead ends, that you just kind of encounter. It's like these things started and they went and they just didn't go anywhere. Like, there were a couple side quests, like the Vox Cipher, whatever it was. Didn't really go anywhere aside from one room. A couple side quests that really had no ending to them. The whole Chen Lin thing. We go through these dimensions to try to save him and get the weapons for the Vox, and in the end, the Vox have the weapons, Chen Lin's dead, the whole thing is basically meaningless, because we basically didn't have to do anything. And then the big one was Slate. Slate, who is probably the best character, or best Colombian character in the entire game. He's this Wounded Knee veteran, and his entire rebellion was because Comstock was parading around that he had been at Wounded Knee and he had fought these battles, but Slate never saw him there and never like he was just not there, and Slate believed him a liar, and that he was ruining their reputation and the name of those who had died at Wounded Knee. So he was rebelling to kind of, show unit pride, I guess, and to, tear Comstock down for being a liar. But here's the thing. Because in the end it's revealed that Comstock was Booker, and Booker was at Wounded Knee, and it was because of Wounded Knee that Booker became Comstock, it essentially proves Slate to be a liar. And it means basically that his entire rebellion, everything he was about, was completely pointless. It had no meaning. I mean, you argued that there was no meaning to begin with, because the whole thing with us going to greet him was he was sending his soldiers in to die at our hands because he wanted them to die a soldier's death. Why he couldn't have used this army for something more useful than that, I don't understand, but that's just how it went. And I don't know, I guess that just bugs me the most, that Slate had this whole noble cause, but in the end it proved out he was completely wrong. And then the last thing I'm going to throw in about the ending. In BioShock 1 and 2, they made a whole thing about, the choices you make determine what ending you get. You save all the little sisters or you kill all the little sisters. And in BioShock 2, they added a little more to that, where you could either spare specific people or kill them. And it impacted the ending you got. BioShock 1 had 3 different endings. There were 2 bad endings, and then there was a good ending. BioShock 2 had like 6 different endings. BioShock Infinite has 1. That's it. No matter what you do in this game, no matter what choices you make, this is the ending you get, this is the ending you're stuck with. Which, in a game that's about infinite upon infinite upon infinite dimensions, endless amounts of dimensions, the fact that you're stuck with only one ending, what would you say to describe that, honey?
What?
Never mind. It's not... It just doesn't make any sense, basically, is what I'm getting at here. And the moral choices that you get, they're in this game, but they don't mean nothing. They cause some aesthetic differences, but that's it. Bird or cage, it really doesn't matter at all. Heads, tails, whether you throw the baseball at the interracial couple or if you throw it at the guy who's running the whole thing, it doesn't matter. The prize you get is the same no matter who you throw the ball at. So it's a matter of, why have these choices in the game if they don't impact anything? If there's no meaning for them to be here, why have them? You know what I mean? It's kind of like in Dante's Inferno, where you had the options to either absolve these poor people of their sins or damn them to a fiery hell for all eternity. It's good for like upgrades, but in terms of like story progression, it doesn't mean anything. To the point where it's like, why even have it? It's pretty much exactly the same thing. And I don't know. It just seems like it just feels like their priorities weren't in the right places with a lot of these game decisions. That's just what I feel. So I guess there's really no putting off this last one. And this is the one people are going to get angry at me over, if they weren't angry already. But now it's time to talk about Elizabeth. Oh my god, Elizabeth. So many people on Tumblr were saying that Elizabeth was this strong, this good female character that people could really look up to. And, she was like a strong female character, basically, in an industry that is kind of lacking that. So I was really excited to meet her. And oh my god, I was so underwhelmed. She was actually one of the biggest disappointments. I mean, Gameplay-wise, she's fine, because she's actually probably the most helpful helper character I've ever seen, because is not really an escort mission. She doesn't get captured. She doesn't get shot at. She gives you ammo and health and money. She's actually pretty cool in that regard, even though it's weird that by doing that you basically make it so that it doesn't really make sense why all these people are after her if they won't even go after her when you're in combat. Contradicts itself a bit. But like the character of her, it's like she knows how to lockpick. She knows the exact latitude and longitude of New York. She knows all these little things, and she's never even left her tower. I mean, if she had like a photographic memory, maybe I understand it, but it's not established that she does. I mean, it says she reads a lot, but yeah, I read a lot too, and I don't remember every single thing I've ever read. And there's no way I would ever remember the exact latitude and longitude of New York City. There's just no way. It's completely unrealistic. And lockpicking really helps when you've been locked in a tower your whole life. And she's like this whole outgoing personality she has, and she's never, at least we don't know that she's ever been around other people before. So it's like, how is she this out? How does she have, for a girl that's been locked in a tower her whole life, how does she have better social skills than a man who's been out in the world his entire life? You know? Like, it's almost Disney princess-esque. And then, like, this whole thing where she's smart, and it's like, she's an idiot. This girl ran headfirst into 2 guards just trying to get away from you. Honestly, she was kind of a pain in the ass, truth be told. Like, just as a character, she's just a pain in my ass. I mean, maybe I'm just putting her on too high of a pedestal, but like, you compare Elizabeth to, like, I don't like to use this example because it's overrated, but put her to like a Joss Whedon character, she doesn't even come close. I mean, I get it's 1912, but that's not even a strong role model for 1912. In fact, Rosalind the Test, I would argue, is a better role model for women than Elizabeth is. Elizabeth is a stupid, naive, but I guess I kind of understand naivety, but just a complete dunce who is completely unrealistic as a character even. And the thing that even makes her special, the whole tearing apart rifts, that's not really something that's special for her. She just does it because she lost her pinky in a rift, and her pinky's in one dimension, she's in another. That's not something that's special for her. Anybody who's lost a limb to a tear can do that to me. Like, theoretically, if I was peeing through a tear if I was peeing into another dimension and the tear closed and my was sliced off, technically this means I could now tear apart all of space and time. You know? Like, it doesn't really sound like something that's really unique to just her. So, you kind of see my problem. And really, Booker's a Pinkerton agent, but he doesn't know how to pick locks on his own. Really, I call bullshit on that. That's just completely unrealistic. I'm sorry. The things that really, that make her important in the game is, why is she necessary? You know, why can she pick locks when a Pinkerton agent can't? Why? This one conversation killed me where, you basically admit to her that, you owe gambling debts and you came here for her to pay them off. She doesn't even react. You have the same conversation 5 minutes later on the Zeppelin, and she suddenly breaks down in tears and then beats you with a wrench. Consistency would be nice. And that's kind of the big problem, is that this game is very inconsistent. And then at the end, it's like she reveals she's like this Time Lord kind of thing, and I don't know. I mean, I know female characters are hard to write, especially when you're a male writer. But I mean, Heather Mason was a kind of a strong female character. Sybil Bennett was a strong female character. Jill Valentine, Claire Redfield, those are strong female characters. Elizabeth is not a strong female character. I'm sorry, I mean, I know I'm kind of putting her on this kind of pedestal, but it's I expected so much more from her. And really, she's like Ashley Graham, only worse. Well, actually, I don't know, not really necessarily worse because she is more helpful in gameplay than Ashley was, but as a character, I honestly think I preferred Ashley. With all these gripes, I'm not saying this game is bad. I'm not saying you shouldn't play it. This game is a strong contender for Game of the Year, and I'm not saying it doesn't deserve that. I'm saying this game is just good. It's decent. It's a fun playthrough, worthy of only one playthrough. There is no replay value at all. And just, I don't know. It felt just weak. Really. I mean, for story, I would still put BioShock 1 on top in the trilogy, and in terms of gameplay, I honestly think BioShock 2 is better. So, yeah, Infinite's just disappointingly simple. Which, considering the subject matter, is actually kind of funny and tragically ironic. But the story it puts out is not fully explored properly. It's full of holes. It's very contradictory. The characters are all terrible people. The gameplay is so textbook and uninspired that it's actually painful. And it's just not that great. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's my thoughts on BioShock Infinite. Sorry if I pissed you off. I didn't mean to. But, yeah. Okay. I'm done. I did a kind of like a side review of this game with Josh Hensley of Project Rallis also. I don't know if that part will go up first. I don't even know when I'm recording that part, truth be told. We're still kind of working out the details for that. But anything I missed in this review we'll probably cover in that one. But, yeah. I'd say this game's like a C. C's average. This game's average. I definitely recommend you play it. And if you're a fan of BioShock, you're going to love this game no matter what I say. And I'm not saying you should hate this game. I'm saying that next time you actually sit down and play it, ask yourself these basic questions. Why do we need Vigors? Why exactly is the plot so good? Why exactly do the racist tones need to be there if they're not really fully explored? Why is there a giant 60-foot metal bird? Because that still doesn't make sense. I don't care if it's based off of Big Daddy. There shouldn't be a giant 60-foot metal bird. Ask yourself, do these characters really stand on the same level of Andrew Ryan? Or are they just throwaway characters that really don't deserve a second glance? I guess just ask yourself these basic questions. Like, am I really enjoying this? Or am I enjoying this just because it's BioShock and there's been so much hype? And because Ken Levine is the guy who made BioShock 1 and System Shock 2. You know, do I really like this game? Do I really think the story's that great? Or am I just kind of going along with the hype? I guess just ask yourself basic questions when you're playing it. You know, make a list for yourself. And if you're still enjoying it afterwards, that's great. I still enjoyed it, despite my complaints. I mean, it's a fun game. Okay, I'm just rambling at this point. I'm going to go. This is going to be a pain in the ass to edit, render, and upload, but I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I'll put a link for when the Project Rallis review goes up, the joint review, and I'm amazed this battery lasted as long as it did. Okay. Peace soup.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, a favorite, subscribe to the channel, post it on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Google+, Reddit, something awful, spray paint on buildings, make a flag of it, get it tattooed in your forearm, get it branded into your forehead. This is SickSlickProductions saying keep the spirit of the movies alive.